The air in the penthouse buzzed with the faint hum of the city below. Nathaniel Hayes, the billionaire CEO of Hayes Enterprises, stood near the panoramic window, his gaze fixed on the sprawling skyline. At 42, Nathaniel was the epitome of success. Sharp suits, ruthless business acumen, and a fortune that put him in the top 10 richest men globally. Yet, in this moment, he felt hollow. "Are you serious, Nathaniel?" Amelia's voice cut through the silence like a knife. His wife of 8 years, the statuesque former model, was leaning against the marble kitchen island, her arms crossed. She looked every bit the fashion icon she was, her expression one of disbelief. "Yes, I'm serious," he replied evenly, turning to face her. His grey-blue eyes betrayed a vulnerability she rarely saw. "I've thought about this for a long time. I want a child." Amelia laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "We've been through this. Children aren't part of our plan. We travel, we enjoy life, we don't tie ourselves down." "You mean your plan?" Nathaniel corrected, his voice steady but firm. "You've made it clear how you feel, and I respect that. But I've made a decision. I'm going to adopt." Amelia's eyes widened, her perfectly arched brows lifting in shock. "Adopt? Alone? Are you out of your mind? Do you even know what that entails? You can't just order a baby like one of your acquisitions." "This isn't up for debate, Amelia," Nathaniel said, his tone final. "I've already started the process." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Amelia's lips parted as if to argue, but then she snapped them shut, her gaze narrowing. Without another word, she turned on her heels and disappeared into their bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Nathaniel exhaled, running a hand through his perfectly styled dark hair. He knew this decision would drive a wedge between them, but the ache in his chest had grown unbearable. It wasn't just the emptiness of their massive home or the sterile monotony of his days. It was the yearning for connection, for purpose beyond boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. A week later, he received the call. The adoption agency had matched him with a newborn baby boy, abandoned at a hospital mere hours after birth. Nathaniel's heart raced as he listened to the details. The child had no family, no history. A clean slate, a chance. The day he picked up the baby, he was uncharacteristically nervous. The hospital room was small and bright, filled with the soft coos of the infant nestled in a bassinet. The nurse smiled warmly as she handed him the swaddled bundle. "He's been waiting for you," she said. Nathaniel held his breath as he looked down at the baby. Tiny, fragile, and utterly perfect. The boy's deep brown eyes met his, and in that instant something shifted inside Nathaniel. He felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness, of love he didn't know he was capable of. "Welcome home, little one," he whispered, his voice catching. As he settled the baby into the meticulously designed nursery that evening, Nathaniel's phone buzzed. Amelia's name flashed on the screen. He hesitated before answering. "What?" he said curtly. "Have you lost your mind?" she spat. "You can't do this." "I already have," he replied calmly. "His name is Theo." Amelia let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "Do you think this is sustainable? Do you even know how to care for a baby? You're going to ruin your life, and mine." "Then maybe you should go," Nathaniel said quietly. "If this isn't the life you want, I won't force you to stay." Silence. Then, the line went dead. For weeks, Nathaniel juggled board meetings and night feedings, corporate crises and diaper changes. It was chaos unlike anything he'd ever known, but it was also fulfilling in ways he hadn't expected. Theo became his world, his every decision revolving around the tiny boy who now occupied his penthouse and his heart. One evening, as Nathaniel was giving Theo a bottle, the elevator to the penthouse dinged. He frowned, not expecting anyone. The doors slid open, revealing Amelia. She stepped out slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Her eyes landed on Theo, who gurgled happily in Nathaniel's arms. Something in her expression softened. "What are you doing here?" Nathaniel asked, his voice guarded. Amelia didn't answer immediately. She approached cautiously, her gaze fixed on the baby. "I wanted to see him." Nathaniel studied her warily but nodded. "His name is Theo." Amelia knelt beside the plush armchair where Nathaniel sat, her perfectly manicured fingers brushing against Theo's tiny hand. The baby giggled, and for the first time in months Nathaniel saw a crack in Amelia's icy exterior. "I didn't think," she began, her voice trembling. "I didn't think I could feel anything for a child, but he's Beautiful. Nathaniel didn't respond, his eyes searching hers. For a fleeting moment he thought he saw regret, perhaps even longing. Amelia looked up at him, her expression unreadable. What happens now? Nathaniel hesitated, unsure of her intentions. But before he could answer, Theo let out a tiny yawn, his little fist curling against Nathaniel's chest. Amelia's gaze softened further, and she whispered, "Can I hold him?" As Nathaniel handed Theo to her, a sense of unease settled over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of something far more complicated. Amelia's hands trembled slightly as she held Theo for the first time. The baby nestled against her, his small warmth seeping through the delicate fabric of her silk blouse. She stared at him, her expression unreadable, though a faint tremor in her lower lip betrayed the emotions swirling within her. Nathaniel watched her closely, his posture tense. This was not the woman he'd married, at least not the one he thought he knew. Amelia, the perpetually polished, unshakable figure, was now sitting in his living room cradling a baby she had adamantly rejected just weeks ago. "What do you want, Amelia?" he asked, his voice firm but measured. Amelia didn't look up. Instead, she ran a finger gently across Theo's cheek, eliciting a soft coo. "I don't know," she admitted after a long silence. "I didn't think I wanted this." Nathaniel leaned back, crossing his arms. "And now?" She glanced at him, her eyes filled with something akin to vulnerability. "I don't know," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. He's different." Nathaniel scoffed softly, shaking his head. "He's not different, Amelia. He's always been the same. The only thing that's changed is you." Amelia flinched at the remark, but she didn't argue. Instead, she returned her focus to Theo, whose tiny hand had wrapped itself around her finger. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. For the next few days, Amelia lingered. She came to the penthouse unannounced, staying for hours at a time, always under the guise of just visiting. At first, Nathaniel resisted. He was skeptical of her intentions, certain this was a phase, a fleeting curiosity. But as days turned into weeks, her presence became harder to ignore. Amelia seemed genuinely captivated by Theo. She insisted on feeding him, even if she struggled at first, and Nathaniel caught her humming softly to the baby when she thought no one was listening. She asked questions about his routine, his preferences, his health. Slowly, her icy demeanor thawed, replaced by something warmer, something he hadn't seen in years. Still, Nathaniel couldn't shake his doubts. Late one night, after Theo had been put to bed, he confronted her. "What are you doing, Amelia?" he asked bluntly, leaning against the kitchen counter. "What's your end game here?" She looked up from the mug of tea she was cradling, her eyes weary. "I don't have an end game, Nathaniel." "You always have an end game," he retorted. "You've never done anything without a reason." Amelia sighed, setting the mug down. "Maybe I don't know my reason yet," she said, her voice softer than he expected. "Maybe I'm just trying to figure it out." Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. "And what happens if you decide this isn't for you? What happens to Theo then?" Amelia looked stricken. "I wouldn't—" She stopped herself, taking a deep breath. "I wouldn't do that to him." Nathaniel remained unconvinced. "Forgive me if I don't trust that. You've made it very clear how you feel about children." Amelia opened her mouth to respond, but closed it again, shaking her head. Without another word, she turned and left. In the following weeks, Nathaniel threw himself into balancing his new role as a father with the demands of his empire. Theo became the centerpiece of his life, a constant source of joy and chaos. Yet, despite his initial reservations, he found himself adjusting. The sleepless nights, the endless feedings, the mess, it all became part of a routine he grew to cherish. Amelia's visits continued sporadically. Each time she seemed more comfortable, more natural around Theo. She began to share fragments of her thoughts, confessions that took Nathaniel by surprise. "You know," she said one afternoon, as they sat in the living room, Theo asleep in her arms, "I never thought I'd be good at this." "At what?" Nathaniel asked, glancing up from his laptop. "This, being around a baby. I always assumed I'd mess it up, that I wasn't maternal enough." Nathaniel closed the laptop, giving her his full attention. "And now?" Amelia hesitated, her gaze fixed on Theo. "I don't know." "Okay, it's strange. He makes it feel possible." Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. He wanted to believe her, but a part of him still held back. He'd built his empire on instinct, on reading people and anticipating their moves. With Amelia, his instincts told him to be cautious. The turning point came one evening when Amelia showed up unannounced, her face pale and her eyes rimmed with red. Nathaniel opened the door, immediately on edge. "What happened?" he asked, ushering her inside. I couldn't stay away," she stammered. "I was sitting in my apartment and all I could think about was him." Nathaniel frowned, confused. "Theo?" She nodded, tears spilling over. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I never wanted this, Nathaniel. I never wanted any of it. But now I can't stop thinking about him, about what it would mean to be part of his life." Nathaniel's heart twisted. For the first time, he saw genuine pain in her eyes, a vulnerability she rarely allowed herself to show. "What are you saying, Amelia?" he asked carefully. She took a shaky breath. "I think I want to try. To be there for him. For you." Nathaniel was silent, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to believe her, to welcome her back into their lives. But another part, the part that had spent months adjusting to a life without her, hesitated. "Amelia," he said slowly, "this isn't something you can try and walk away from. Theo deserves more than that. If you're serious about this, you have to be all in." "I know," she whispered, "and I want to be." Her words hung in the air, heavy with both promise and uncertainty. Nathaniel didn't answer, his emotions a tumultuous mix of hope and doubt. For the first time in his life, the man who had always been certain of every decision found himself completely unsure of what to do next. For weeks after Amelia's tearful confession, a delicate truce formed between her and Nathaniel. She began spending more time at the penthouse, easing herself into a routine that revolved around Theo. At first, Nathaniel kept his guard up, observing her every move with suspicion. But over time, her commitment began to feel genuine. Amelia was learning, slowly, awkwardly but earnestly. She struggled with diaper changes, fumbled with bottles, and winced at Theo's piercing cries. But she didn't give up. Nathaniel found himself softening, though the memories of her cold refusals still lingered at the edges of his thoughts. One evening they sat together in the living room after putting Theo to bed. The tension that had dominated their relationship for months seemed to have ebbed, leaving behind a tentative warmth. Amelia was curled up on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, while Nathaniel reviewed documents on his tablet. "You're different now," Amelia said suddenly, breaking the silence. Nathaniel glanced at her. "Different how?" She sipped her wine thoughtfully. "You seem calmer, happier even. I guess I didn't expect that." Nathaniel leaned back, setting the tablet aside. "Theo has changed everything. He's made me realize what's important." Amelia hesitated before speaking. "Do you think I can change too? Be someone who's good at this?" Nathaniel regarded her carefully. "I think people can change if they truly want to. But it takes work, Amelia, and it takes time." She nodded, looking down at her glass. "I'm trying." "I know," Nathaniel said softly, "and I'm starting to believe you." The fragile equilibrium shattered one morning when Amelia's mother, Victoria, showed up unannounced. A woman of impeccable taste and a biting tongue, Victoria Heirs was known for her disdain for anything she considered ordinary. She had made no secret of her disapproval of Nathaniel's decision to adopt, and her arrival brought an immediate chill to the penthouse. "What is this I hear about you playing house with some baby?" Victoria asked, her tone dripping with condescension as she surveyed the living room. Nathaniel kept his expression neutral, cradling Theo in his arms. "Good to see you too, Victoria." Amelia appeared from the hallway, her face pale. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "I came to check on you," Victoria said, her gaze flicking to Theo with barely disguised disdain. "To see if you've completely lost your mind." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "Theo is my son, Victoria. I'd appreciate it if you showed him some respect." "Respect?" Victoria scoffed. "You're a businessman, Nathaniel. You should know better than to make emotional decisions. This experiment will ruin you." Amelia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Mother, stop." Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Amelia's defense. "Oh, so now you're on board with this madness? What happened to the Amelia who said she didn't want children?" Amelia glanced at Nathaniel, then at Theo, her expression conflicted. "Things have changed." Victoria let out a bitter laugh. "You're deluding yourself. This isn't who you are, Amelia. You're not cut out for this." Nathaniel couldn't stay silent any longer. "That's enough, Victoria. You don't get to decide who Amelia is or what she's capable of. And you certainly don't get to insult my son in his own home." Victoria glared at him but didn't respond. Instead, she turned to Amelia. "Think carefully about what you're doing, dear. You're throwing away everything we built for this fantasy." Without waiting for a reply, Victoria grabbed her designer handbag and strode toward the elevator. The doors closed behind her with a soft ding, leaving a tense silence in her wake. Nathaniel turned to Amelia. "Are you okay?" Amelia nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I'm sorry about her." "It's not your fault," Nathaniel said gently, "but you need to decide whose voice matters more, hers or yours." Amelia didn't respond. She simply walked to the nursery and closed the door behind her. Over the following days, Amelia became distant. She still showed up at the penthouse, but her once earnest efforts with Theo seemed half-hearted. Nathaniel noticed the shift and confronted her one evening after Theo had fallen asleep. "Talk to me," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter as she picked at her dinner. Amelia looked up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't know if I can do this, Nathaniel." His chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I thought I could change," she said, her voice trembling. "But my mother's right. This isn't who I am. I've never wanted this life, and I don't know if I ever will." Nathaniel felt a surge of anger and heartbreak. "So what? You're just going to walk away from Theo, from us?" "I don't know," Amelia cried, her voice breaking. "I'm trying, but I feel like I'm drowning." Nathaniel's voice hardened. "You don't get to drown, Amelia. Not when there's a child involved. He didn't ask for this. He didn't ask for you to come into his life and then leave when it got hard." Tears streamed down her face, but Nathaniel didn't relent. "You need to figure out what you want, Amelia, and you need to do it now because Theo deserves stability. He deserves parents who are all in." Amelia wiped her eyes, her expression torn. "I need time." Nathaniel shook his head. "Time isn't a luxury we have. Not when it comes to him." The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Amelia stopped coming to the penthouse altogether. Nathaniel tried calling her, but his calls went unanswered. He felt a mix of relief and sorrow, relief that he could focus on Theo without the uncertainty of Amelia's presence, and sorrow for what could have been. Then one evening she showed up. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Nathaniel opened the door, his heart sinking. "I can't do this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could, but I can't." Nathaniel's face hardened. "So, that's it? You're giving up?" Amelia nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Nathaniel. I wish I was stronger, but I'm not." Nathaniel felt a wave of emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment, but he kept his voice steady. "If this is your decision, then you need to leave. For good." Amelia nodded again, her sobs racking her body. She stepped forward, hesitating for a moment before pressing a kiss to Theo's forehead. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. Nathaniel stood there, holding Theo close as the elevator doors closed behind her. He felt a mix of relief and sadness, knowing that this chapter of his life was over. But as he looked down at Theo, who stared up at him with wide, trusting eyes, Nathaniel knew one thing for certain. They would be okay. Together, they would build a life full of love and purpose. And that, he realized, was enough. The days that followed Amelia's departure were both heavy and liberating for Nathaniel. The emptiness of her absence hung in the air, a reminder of the family he had tried to piece together. But as he looked at Theo, he realized that he had exactly what he needed, a sense of purpose that no boardroom victory or luxury penthouse could provide. Nathaniel threw himself wholeheartedly into fatherhood. It was a steep learning curve, but one he tackled with the same determination that had made him a billionaire. He researched everything: how to introduce solid foods, how to soothe a teething baby, even how to navigate the milestones of early childhood. His assistant, Claire, became an invaluable ally, helping him juggle work and parenting. Heirs Enterprises thrived under his leadership, but Nathaniel knew his real success was at home. 6 months after Amelia left, Nathaniel attended a gala in support of a children's charity. It was one of the few events he allowed himself to attend since becoming a father, and only because the cause resonated deeply with him. As he mingled among the elite, his mind wandered back to Theo. He checked his impulsively, waiting for updates from the nanny, though he trusted her implicitly. "Nathaniel Hayes," a warm voice interrupted his thoughts. The man of the hour. He turned to see a striking woman with auburn hair and a kind smile. She extended her hand. Samantha Cooper. I'm on the board for the foundation. Nathaniel shook her hand, intrigued. A pleasure to meet you, Samantha. As they talked, Nathaniel found himself drawn to her genuine passion for helping children. Samantha, a pediatrician, had founded a clinic for underprivileged families and spoke with earnest enthusiasm about her work. Unlike the superficial conversations that dominated such events, their exchange felt refreshing. So, what brought you here tonight? Samantha asked. My son, Nathaniel replied without hesitation. He's the reason I'm involved with this foundation. You're a father? She asked, her surprise quickly giving way to a smile. How old is he? Just over a year, Nathaniel said, pulling out his phone to show her a photo of Theo. His name's Theo. Samantha's face softened as she looked at the picture. He's adorable. You must be proud. I am, Nathaniel said, his voice warm. He's changed my life in ways I never expected. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and by the end of the evening, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Over the next few months, Nathaniel and Samantha grew closer. Their relationship began slowly, built on a foundation of shared values and mutual respect. Samantha's easy demeanor and natural warmth brought a sense of balance to Nathaniel's life. She was patient with Theo, often bringing small gifts or offering advice on how to handle the challenges of parenthood. One sunny afternoon, Nathaniel invited Samantha to the park, where Theo loved to watch the ducks in the pond. As Samantha crouched beside Theo, helping him toss breadcrumbs to the eager birds, Nathaniel couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly she fit into their world. You're good with him, Nathaniel said as they walked back to the car. Samantha smiled, adjusting the sun hat on Theo's head. He's easy to love. Nathaniel felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he'd craved this. A partner who not only accepted Theo, but embraced him wholeheartedly. Just as Nathaniel began to settle into his new life, Amelia resurfaced. She called one evening, her voice tentative. Nathaniel, she said, can we talk? His heart sank. He hadn't heard from her in nearly a year, and now, when everything was finally falling into place, she was back. Against his better judgment, he agreed to meet her. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the tension between them palpable. Amelia looked different. Her usual polished exterior had been replaced with a more subdued, almost fragile appearance. I've been in therapy, she began, her voice steady but soft. I've been trying to figure out why I couldn't handle being a mother. Why I left. Nathaniel said nothing, waiting for her to continue. I think I was scared, she admitted. Scared of failing, of losing myself. But I've realized that running away was the real failure. What do you want, Amelia? Nathaniel asked, his tone measured. I want to be part of Theo's life, she said, her eyes brimming with tears. I know I don't deserve it after what I did, but I want to try. Even if it's just a small part, I want to be there for him. Nathaniel's emotions churned. Part of him wanted to shut her out, to protect Theo from the uncertainty she represented. But another part of him saw the sincerity in her. I'll think about it, he said finally. But this isn't about you or me, it's about what's best for Theo. Amelia nodded, her expression a mix of hope and resignation. Nathaniel wrestled with the decision for days, seeking advice from Samantha and his closest confidants. Ultimately, he decided to allow Amelia supervised visits with Theo, with the understanding that any inconsistency on her part would end her involvement. The arrangement was tentative, but surprisingly functional. Amelia seemed genuinely committed. Though she kept her distance from Nathaniel and Samantha, she spent her time with Theo building trust, slowly earning his affection. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and Samantha's relationship deepened. She became an integral part of his and Theo's lives, offering stability and love in ways Nathaniel hadn't thought possible. Their bond was not built on urgency or passion, but on something far more enduring: partnership and understanding. One evening, as Nathaniel tucked Theo into bed, Amelia lingered in the doorway. She watched silently, her face a mixture of joy and sadness. He's happy, she said as Nathaniel stepped out of the nursery. He is, Nathaniel agreed. Amelia hesitated before speaking. I think it's time for me to step back. You've given him everything he needs, Nathaniel. And Samantha. She's wonderful with him. Nathaniel studied her, surprised. "You don't have to disappear, Amelia. You've come a long way." "I know," she said, her voice steady, "but I think this is what's best for Theo. I'll always love him, but I think he's better off without the confusion of me coming and going." Her words, though bitter-sweet, carried a maturity that Nathaniel hadn't seen before. He nodded, offering her a small smile. "Thank you for being honest." Amelia leaned down to kiss Theo's forehead one last time before quietly leaving. Months later, as Nathaniel stood in the backyard of his estate watching Samantha chase Theo around the garden, he felt a profound sense of peace. The path to this moment had been fraught with challenges, but it had led to something beautiful, a family built on love, resilience, and second chances. Theo's laughter filled the air as he ran toward Nathaniel, his tiny arms outstretched. Nathaniel scooped him up, holding him close as Samantha joined them, her smile radiant. In that moment, Nathaniel realized that while his journey to fatherhood hadn't gone as planned, it had led him to exactly where he was meant to be.